You, Senator Cameron. Senator Kroger.
Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy President. Well, if there ever was an address to this place that just demonstrates how out of touch those in the opposition are, then we've just heard it from Senator Cameron. Because I thought the days of seeing things through the prism of class warfare was a thing of the 60s. It's 50 years ago. Come, get up to speed, Senator Cameron. It is extraordinary that you still actually seek to characterise things through that prism, and I think that that is a really sad reflection on you and a sad reflection on the senators who sit on the opposition benches. If I could just make a couple of observations, and that's firstly that I think that what we are seeing today with this urgency motion is the most breathtaking hypocrisy that we have seen for a long time. And that's saying something, I've got to say. Having sat through the protestations of the government under originally a Rudd government, and then a Gillard-led government, and then a Rudd government again, and their claims to making sure that they were investing in the future of our young Australians, and how wrong they were. If I could just come to the facts here, because we actually seem to have missed the actual facts of the situation. We know what they are. I actually suggest that most Australians do. But the opposition are intent upon peddling misinformation in this debate. And the first thing is, in the words of the former Treasurer Chris Bowen himself, after it was the Charter of Business Honesty that demonstrated that $1.2 billion was being cut out of the education fund, after that it was the former Treasurer Chris Bowen who admitted that Labor had cut $1.2 billion out of school funding just weeks before the election. So just weeks before the election, he actually conceded that they had done that because there was no agreement cut with the states of Queensland and Western Australia and the Northern Territory. So he conceded himself that the then government did cut funding. But we don't hear any of this today. Oh no, it's all protestations about what we are doing in fixing up the mess that we have inherited from the more recent Rudd ALP Greens alliance government. So what we're not hearing and what we haven't heard today is the fact that we are now dealing with the national education funding model that is in the best interests of all young Australians, given the extraordinarily bad and incompetent fiscal scenario that the former government bequeathed to us. So whilst one of the other things that we have to deal with here is increasing the debt ceiling so that we have sufficient resources to deal with the appropriations and budget determinations, we forget, just coincidentally, those on the other side forget who has actually bequeathed this legacy to Australians. And I have to suggest to you, Senator Cameron, that the Australian public are not fools and they will not forget who has put the country in this situation. Who has put the country in this situation, which is why the protestations that we continue to hear and the interjections, and with great respect through you, Chair, notwithstanding how difficult it was, I did give the courtesy to Senator Cameron for him to make his address in silence. It is a courtesy he finds very difficult to extend to others. So perhaps he should take a leaf out of other people's books and in extending some decent and common courtesy in this chamber. But notwithstanding that, What concerns me about this debate is that all we hear about is the effect that increasing money makes to a particular outcome. And all we're hearing today is about the dollar value and the bottom line. The fundamental difference, the very fundamental difference between the coalition government and an ALP opposition or government is this, and that is that we do not believe that the actual dollar amount is the only thing that will increase standards. And as we have seen by independent reports, international independent reports, may I say, that have compared the numeracy and literacy standards of Australia with like-sized countries and economies, we have seen, notwithstanding the protestations on the other side of the chamber, that the literacy and numeracy standards of our young men and women have declined under the ALP Greens Alliance regime. But we don't hear about that. All we heard about was the very fact that they were commissioning a report.
Senator Kroger, resume your seat. I remind members on my left that, understanding Order 197, senators have the right to be heard in silence. Senator Kroger.
All we heard about the situation was that they were going to commission a report, and they commissioned Gonski to provide this report. He came up with a report that recommended an investment of $6 billion. Now, the government of the day was in such dire straits that that was clearly out of the equation, and they cherry-picked that report, to reduce it to what we have today. So I stress, and I urge those on the other side, look at the real ways in which we can raise standards.
Order. The time